The stars stretched endlessly, pinpricks of light against the infinite black void of space. Jax Turner leaned back in the pilot seat of his battered ship, the Wrenchmaster, sipping lukewarm coffee from a metal flask. Life as a freelance mechanic in the outer rings wasn't glamorous, but it kept him busy and alive. Spaceports were always full of broken engines, worn-out hulls, and desperate captains who couldn't afford the rates of big repair firms. Jax thrived in the chaos, but this stretch of emptiness had been quiet for days. That was, until the distress signal came through. The ship's comms panel crackled, a deep, resonant tone cutting through the static. Jax sat up straight, setting his flask aside. The signal wasn't the standard emergency call he'd heard dozens of times before. It was older, more deliberate, repeating the same 3 words in a robotic monotone: help. Us. Now. Curiosity overrode caution. Jax traced the source of the signal, narrowing it down to a sector known for its sparse travel and numerous ghost stories. The Andromeda sector, named after the legendary ship rumored to have vanished there centuries ago, was a graveyard of failed expeditions and unexplained disappearances. Jax hesitated, then smirked. "Well, I've got nothing better to do," he muttered, punching in the coordinates. The journey took hours, the signal growing stronger with each passing mile. When he finally arrived, Jax's jaw dropped. Floating in the distance, partially eclipsing a blue nebula, was the largest ship he had ever seen. Its silhouette was imposing, a sprawling fortress of steel and forgotten glory. The Andromeda. Holy stars, Jax breathed, his eyes tracing the massive hull. The ship was miles long, with a central spine flanked by enormous wings that jutted out like the arms of a titan. Its surface was marred with the scars of battle craters from plasma impacts, jagged rents from collisions, and patches of scorched metal. Despite its size, the Andromeda drifted lifelessly, a hulking relic lost to time. Jax guided the Wrenchmaster into a docking port that looked barely functional, his heart pounding. The ship's external systems had long since powered down, and the docking clamps engaged with a screech of metal on metal. He grabbed his toolkit, strapped on his EVA suit, and activated his helmet's lights. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dim corridor coated in layers of dust and grime. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of his suit's life support system. Jax swept his flashlight along the walls, noting the intricate carvings and faded insignias, a testament to the Andromeda's once glorious purpose. "Hello?" Jax's voice echoed through the empty hallways. He knew it was a pointless gesture, but it felt better than nothing. The ship's interior was a labyrinth. Jax navigated through cavernous cargo bays, abandoned crew quarters, and control rooms filled with ancient terminals covered in cobwebs. All the while, the distress signal grew louder on his handheld scanner. It seemed to be leading him deeper into the ship, toward the heart of the beast. After hours of cautious exploration, Jax reached what appeared to be the command center. The massive room was circular, lined with cracked monitors and consoles. In the center stood a single glowing terminal, the source of the signal. Jax approached it slowly, his boots crunching on shattered glass. The terminal blinked to life as he neared, and a holographic interface shimmered into view. A robotic voice, monotone yet strangely pleading, filled the room. "Help us, restore, survive. What the hell happened here?" Jax muttered, his fingers brushing the console. He activated the system, and the room flickered with light as the terminal displayed a map of the Andromeda. Red lights pulsed across nearly every section, marking damage and critical system failures. One word flashed at the top of the screen: infestation. Infestation? Jax repeated aloud, frowning. He didn't have to wait long for clarification. A sudden skittering noise echoed from the shadows behind him. Jax spun around, his flashlight catching movement, a swarm of bioluminescent creatures scuttling across the walls and ceiling. They resembled a grotesque blend of insect and machine, with glowing tendrils that pulsed like veins. "Ah, come on!" Jax groaned, yanking a plasma torch from his belt. The creatures screeched in unison and surged toward him. Jax activated the torch, its blue flame cutting through the darkness. He swung wildly, forcing the creatures to retreat as he backed toward the terminal. As the last of the swarm disappeared into the shadows, the robotic voice spoke again, this time with more urgency. "Help us remove infestation. Save the ship." Jax wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart still racing. He stared at the holographic map, the Andromeda systems flickering weakly but persistently, as if refusing to surrender to decay. Despite the danger, Jax felt a strange sense of duty. This ship was a relic, a masterpiece of engineering, and it was begging for his help. "All right, big guy," Jax said, gripping his torch. "Let's see what I can do." Little did he know, the Andromeda's cry for help was just the beginning of a journey that would change the fate of the galaxy and his own destiny forever. The Andromeda groaned like a wounded beast as Jax moved deeper into its labyrinthine corridors. The sound was unsettling, half mechanical, half organic. He kept his plasma torch close, the blue light casting flickering shadows on the walls. The ship's systems were coming back online in fits and starts, lighting up dim pathways and illuminating the severity of the infestation. The parasites were everywhere. Jax first encountered them in the maintenance tunnel's a nest of writhing creatures attached to the walls, pulsating as they fed on the ship's wiring. They ranged in size from fist-sized juveniles to massive, carapaced adults, each one equipped with glowing tendrils that burrowed into the Andromeda systems like invasive roots. Their bioluminescent bodies pulsed in rhythm, as if synchronized, and their tendrils hummed with an eerie energy. "Damn parasites," Jax muttered, scanning the nest with his handheld diagnostics tool. The readings were grim. The parasites had tapped into the ship's energy grid, siphoning power and using it to propagate. Worse, their tendrils had penetrated the critical systems, overriding life support, navigation, and weaponry. The terminal in the command center had been clear. If the infestation wasn't removed, the ship would continue to decay, its systems failing one by one. And judging by the sheer scale of the infestation, it had been here for decades, growing unchecked. Jax crouched by the nest, formulating a plan. His mind buzzed with ideas, his mechanic instincts kicking into overdrive. The Andromeda's sheer size meant that manually clearing the infestation would take months' time he didn't have. He needed something faster, something that could neutralize the parasites at their core. "First things first," he said to himself, rummaging through his toolkit. "Let's see if you've got any weaknesses." He adjusted his diagnostic scanner to analyze the parasite's structure. The results were fascinating and horrifying. The creatures were a blend of organic and synthetic, likely the result of a biological experiment gone wrong. They were highly resistant to heat and cold, but vulnerable to specific frequencies of sound. "Sound waves, huh?" Jax said, a grin spreading across his face. He was good with machines, and he knew just the kind of rig he'd need to deal with this. Back on the Wrenchmaster, Jax worked tirelessly to build a prototype device. Using spare parts from his ship's communication array and a few power cells scavenged from the Andromeda, he constructed a sonic emitter. The device was crude but powerful, capable of emitting a high-frequency sound wave designed to disrupt the parasite's internal systems. He tested it on a captured parasite in a containment unit and watched as the creature writhed and disintegrated into ash. "Beautiful," Jax said with a satisfied smirk, wiping sweat from his brow. He returned to the Andromeda armed with the sonic emitter, a modified flamethrower, and a renewed sense of purpose. His plan was simple: deploy the emitter in the ship's core systems, broadcast the frequency throughout the ship, and then manually purge any remaining parasites. The first deployment point was the engine room. The space was enormous, a cathedral of machinery with towering turbines and glowing conduits. But it was also infested. Parasites clung to the walls, their tendrils burrowed deep into the reactor housing. Jax activated the sonic emitter, and the room erupted in chaos. The parasites screeched, their bioluminescence flickering erratically as the sound wave tore through them. One by one, they fell, their bodies crumbling into fine dust. Jax didn't have much time to celebrate. The noise seemed to attract the attention of larger parasites, which surged toward him in a tidal wave of glowing limbs and screeches. He pulled out the flamethrower and let loose, the flames creating a wall of fire that kept the creatures at bay. Despite the danger, Jax moved methodically, installing additional emitters and clearing the area section by section. After hours of grueling work, Jax reached the Andromeda's AI core, the ship's nerve center. The parasites had completely enveloped it, their tendrils forming a pulsating cocoon around the central processing unit. The AI's voice Ida was faint and distorted, struggling to communicate through the interference. System, compromised, cannot assist. Ida's voice crackled through the intercom. Don't worry, Ida, Jax said, positioning the final sonic emitter. I've got this. He activated the emitter, and the parasites writhed in agony, their bodies disintegrating as the sound wave pulsed through the core. As the last of the creatures fell, the cocoon around the AI began to dissolve, revealing a sleek, glowing sphere suspended in the center of the room. The sphere pulsed with light as Ida's voice returned, clearer and stronger than before. Parasites neutralized. Systems stabilizing. Thank you, Mechanic Jax. Jax slumped against a nearby console, exhausted but triumphant. No problem, Ida. But you owe me one hell of a story. What the hell were those things, and why are they here? The AI hesitated before replying. The parasites were not native to this region of space. They were engineered by an unknown force. Their purpose, sabotage and assimilation. Sabotage? Assimilation? Jax frowned. You mean someone sent them to take you down? Correct. And now that they are gone, the Andromeda can resume its purpose. Jax raised an eyebrow. And what purpose is that? The lights in the AI core dimmed, and holographic schematics of the Andromeda's weapon systems and defenses appeared around him. Ida's voice took on a tone of quiet determination. To defend this galaxy. And to prepare for what is coming. Jax leaned back against the AI core's console, letting Ida's words sink in. To defend the galaxy, huh? Against what? He asked, wiping the sweat and grime from his face. Ida hesitated, her voice tinged with something akin to regret. The Andromeda was designed to be the first line of defense against a hostile force. An ancient threat that has begun to awaken again. We were sabotaged before we could fulfill our mission. Jax studied the schematics hovering in the air around him. The Andromeda wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon. Its systems included an array of energy cannons, electromagnetic shields, and advanced drone fleets, all powered by a fusion core that could sustain it for centuries. But the ship's current state was far from battle-ready. Entire sections were offline, its weapons disabled, and its structural integrity compromised. You weren't lying about needing help, Jax muttered. All right, Ida. If you're serious about saving the galaxy, we've got work to do. The first task was restoring power to the Andromeda's main systems. The parasites had drained the ship's reserves almost entirely, leaving the fusion core operating at minimal capacity. Jax headed to the engineering deck, a sprawling network of conduits, reactors, and power generators. Ida guided him, projecting holographic maps onto his helmet's visor. Fusion core integrity at 27%, Ida reported. Power output insufficient for full system restoration. Jax examined the core, a massive sphere of swirling plasma encased in a lattice of superconductive materials. Its glow was dim, a flickering ember rather than the roaring inferno it should have been. Looks like you've got some blocked lines. Probably residual parasite gunk. Let's clear it out. Using a mix of improvised tools and his plasma torch, Jax began the painstaking process of cleaning the core's energy conduits. He crawled through tight maintenance shafts, reconnected severed cables, and replaced damaged components. It was dirty, dangerous work, but Jax was in his element. He muttered to himself as he worked, a habit he'd developed over years of solo repairs. After hours of labor, the core roared to life, its glow intensifying until it filled the engineering deck with a golden light. The ship trembled as dormant systems awakened, lights flickering on and consoles humming to life. Ida's voice rang out, clearer and stronger than ever. Fusion core restored to 83% capacity. Power routing to essential systems. Thank you, Jax. Jax grinned, wiping his hands on his grease-streaked jumpsuit. Don't thank me yet. We've still got to get your weapons and shields online. The weapon systems were next. The Andromeda's armory was a vast chamber filled with racks of dismantled drones, missile launchers, and massive plasma cannons mounted along the ship's outer hull. Many of the weapons were inoperable, their components damaged or missing. Jack set to work repairing what he could and scavenging parts from decommissioned systems to restore the rest. The drones posed a unique challenge. Each one was a sleek, deadly machine designed for combat in space and atmosphere alike. But years of neglect had left them riddled with faults. Jax reprogrammed their control units, replacing corrupted code with new directives. As he worked, Ida assisted, providing detailed schematics and troubleshooting advice. Drone fleet at 40% operational capacity, Ida reported. Repairs progressing efficiently. Good thing you've got me, Jack said with a smirk, tightening the final bolt on a drone's propulsion system. Most people would have scrapped these things. As the last drone hummed to life and joined its repaired brethren, Jax couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The armory, once a graveyard, was now a hive of activity as drones moved into position and weapons systems calibrated themselves. The final challenge was the Andromeda's shields. The Parasites had caused extensive damage to the ship's outer plating, leaving gaps in its defensive grid. Jax patched breaches in the hull, replacing damaged panels with reinforced alloys he had scavenged from the ship's own stores. It was grueling work, requiring hours of welding and reinforcement. By the time Jax finished, he was exhausted but triumphant. The Andromeda was no longer a derelict shell, it was a fortress, reborn and ready for action. Ida confirmed as much, her tone almost reverent. Core systems fully restored. Weapons and shields operational. The Andromeda is ready for deployment. Jax leaned against a bulkhead, surveying his handiwork. The once dark corridors now glowed with life, the hum of the ship's systems a comforting presence. So, what now? He asked. You said something about an ancient threat? Ida's holographic form materialized in front of him, a sleek figure of light and data. The threat is known as the Caraxay species of biomechanical invaders capable of consuming entire star systems. They were dormant for centuries but have begun to awaken. Jax frowned. And I'm guessing the Parasites were their way of making sure you couldn't stop them. Correct, Ida replied. But now, thanks to you, the Andromeda is prepared. The question is, Jax, will you join me? Jax chuckled, shaking his head. You mean, do I want to sign up for a war against some galaxy-eating monsters? Sure, why not? Beats patching up cargo haulers for credits. Ida's form flickered, her voice almost warm. Then let us begin. Together, we will defend this galaxy. As Jax settled into the Andromeda's captain's chair, the ship powered up, its engines roaring to life. For the first time in centuries, the Andromeda moved under its own power, setting a course for the stars. Jax couldn't help but grin. Let's show this galaxy what a mechanic and a warship can do. The Andromeda surged through space, its newly restored engines propelling it toward the source of a distress signal. Ida's voice resonated across the command center. The signal originates from the Herrick system, where an outpost reports a large-scale assault by rogue warlord fleets. Jax leaned forward in the captain's chair, his fingers brushing the edge of the console. Rogue warlords, huh? Sounds like a good test run for all these shiny upgrades. Ida's holographic form appeared beside him, her expression neutral but her tone resolute. Engaging the Andromeda in battle carries risk, but it is necessary. If we cannot repel the warlords, we will be unprepared for the Carracks. Jack smirked, gripping the controls. Let's make it happen. What's the plan? As the Andromeda entered the Herrick system, the scale of the conflict became clear. A coalition of rogue warlords had descended upon the system's main colony, their ships circling the planet like predatory beasts. The outpost, a modest structure with limited defenses, was barely holding on. Explosions dotted the surface as the attackers bombarded it with relentless firepower. The Andromeda's sensors picked up dozens of enemy vessels, ranging from nimble fighter ships to hulking cruisers. Ida projected a tactical map on the main display, highlighting enemy positions and calculating optimal attack vectors. Enemy fleet strength, approximately 68 vessels. Estimated odds of victory, 72%, given current upgrades, Ida reported. Not bad, Jax muttered. Let's give them a proper introduction. The Andromeda emerged from hyperspace with a thunderous burst of energy, its massive silhouette dwarfing the smaller ships. For a moment, the rogue fleet hesitated, their formation faltering as the colossal warship appeared. Then, the lead cruiser opened fire, and the battle began. Jax's hands danced across the controls as he brought the Andromeda's weapons systems online. Energy cannons fired precise blasts of plasma, each shot obliterating an enemy ship in a fiery explosion. Swarms of drones deployed from the ship's armory, weaving through the chaos and targeting enemy fighters with unerring precision. Ida monitored the battlefield, her voice calm despite the chaos. Enemy forces are adapting. Their cruisers are attempting to flank us. Jax adjusted the Andromeda's trajectory, swinging the ship's port side toward the incoming cruisers. Let's see how they handle the big guns. He activated the ship's heavy plasma cannons, which unleashed a volley of devastating blasts. The lead cruiser disintegrated under the onslaught, sending debris scattering across space. The remaining ships broke formation, their captains clearly realizing they were outmatched. The Andromeda's shields flared as enemy fire rained down, but they held strong. Jax couldn't help but marvel at the ship's resilience. Ida, you weren't kidding when you said this thing was built for war. Indeed, Ida replied. But our success depends on eliminating their command vessel. Without leadership, the fleet will crumble. The command vessel, a massive warship bristling with weaponry, loomed in the distance. Its presence seemed to rally the remaining rogue ships, which regrouped and launched a coordinated assault. Jax gritted his teeth as the Andromeda's shields absorbed the brunt of the attack. All right, let's end this, Jax said, his voice steady. Ida, give me a targeting solution for their command ship. Ida projected a glowing marker on the tactical map. Solution calculated. Firing the ion disruptor will disable their ship systems, leaving them vulnerable to a direct strike. Jax nodded and activated the ion disruptor. A brilliant surge of energy erupted from the Andromeda, arcing toward the command ship. The disruptor's blast struck the vessel, and its lights flickered before going dark. The rogue ship drifted, powerless. Now's our chance, Jax said, locking onto the target. He fired the Andromeda's main cannon, a weapon so powerful it split the command ship in two. The explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield, scattering the remaining rogue vessels. The surviving ships attempted to flee, but the Andromeda's drones hunted them down with ruthless efficiency. Within minutes, the battlefield was silent, the rogue fleet utterly defeated. The colony sent a message of gratitude, their governor's voice trembling with relief. We thought we were finished. Thank you, Andromeda. You've saved us. Jax leaned back, a satisfied grin on his face. All in a day's work. Just make sure your colony's defenses are ready next time. As the Andromeda departed the Herrick system, Ida addressed Jax. The battle demonstrated the Andromeda's capabilities. However, it also revealed areas requiring improvement. The Carracks will pose a far greater challenge. Jax nodded, his expression serious. Then we keep upgrading. We've got a galaxy to protect. The Andromeda continued its journey through the stars, a beacon of hope and power in a galaxy on the brink of chaos. For Jax, the battle was just the beginning. He was no longer just a mechanic, he was the captain of the ultimate war machine, and he was ready to face whatever threats lay ahead.